Folks, there's no other way to start this off. South Carolina has lost for the first time since the 2023 Final Four. But I'll tell you right now, it wasn't a surprise to the Bruins. Cori Close talked about it in the postgame. They prepared this game thinking that they were going to win this game. I got my thoughts. I got the thoughts from the players and the coaches on this No Cap Space postgame show. For Don Staley, this schedule kind of felt like an interesting one because the thing is, was this team ever meant to go undefeated? Obviously, it's the goal, but the expectation, that's not one you can really set for yourself. I feel like it's something that just happens. And this year, it hasn't. They lose early to obviously a very, very good team in UCLA. And now, what do you learn from it? What do you take from it? Here's what Don Staley had to say in regards to that.
Yeah, my message was, this is what we usually do to teams. It doesn't feel good when you're on the receiving end of it. But you also know you got beat by a great team, like executing on both sides of that. It was beautiful basketball by UCLA, beautiful on both sides. Like I can't, I'm on the opposite side of it, but you can't help but to love up on it because it was fluid on both sides of the ball. They wanted it. I thought our kids fought, but we ran into a buzzsaw today.
And when it comes to South Carolina, this team looks different for several ways. This is the first time in almost a decade that South Carolina does not have a dominant big. There has been almost an avatar effect of bigs for South Carolina, for Don Staley, Asia Wilson, to Aaliyah Boston, to Camila Cardoso. They have always had a dominant back-to-the-basket big that they could go to and rely on as the foundation of their team on both sides of the ball. And this year, they just don't have it. It's a different formula. It's a more volatile formula where offenses can sputter because you're relying more on your guards as opposed to getting into the paint. At the end of the first quarter, they had 2 registered layup attempts. They couldn't get to the rim against this UCLA defense, and that required them to take more shots that we're just not accustomed to seeing a South Carolina offense take. Here's what Don Staley had to say about that and this new kind of look formula that they are having to either force their bigs to kind of grow in a different way and require them to grow up faster than they may want to, or have the guards step up. Here's what Don had to say.
It's great. I thought some good stuff came out of it, like some really good stuff. I mean, stuff that, obviously our shot selection is something that we are dealing with on a daily basis once we get that under control. But I thought we had some really good contributions from, people that don't play a whole lot, that we could probably give a little bit more minutes to. We'll figure it out. I mean, we're in transformation. I mean, we're in transition from having a dominant big to not having a dominant big, and figuring out how we can incorporate our big scoring the basketball a little bit. So we'll figure it out. We gotta get comfortable with it. Our bigs have to get comfortable with doing it a little bit differently. But I think it was great for the game. I just told our team this is our second loss in 2 years. So no, it doesn't feel good. But yes, we have to figure things out, and we will.
Look, Cori Close said this, that the game plan for the opposing team always starts and ends with Lauren Betts. Don Staley echoed that same sentiment and felt like they did a good job against Lauren. And I would agree. I would concur that Lauren Betts ends up with 5 of 8 and only 80 shot attempts. You take that if you're South Carolina. The problem was everyone else around her absolutely hooped. London Jones was phenomenal. She hooped. I mean, just the ability that UCLA had to use the gravity of Lauren Betts and use that in a way, instead of forcing it into Betts, as a way to allow the other players to shine on this really talented and deep roster, was super, super impressive. So I asked Cori Close about that. How do you avoid forcing it to Betts and allow the others to be the ones to win you this game?
Todd Luca, No Cap Space. Cori, you mentioned at the beginning of this, the scouting report starts and ends with Lauren, and Don kind of echoed that same sentiment. And when you have a player that's that talented, it's easy, I feel like, to get into the repetition of trying to force it in. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't something I really saw today. We saw the other players step up. I'm just interested in how impressed you were by the avoidance of forcing it and allowing the other players to step up in that way today.
Well, I thought it started really with DZ. I thought she made some great cuts away from the ball. She saw that we were really trying to hit Lauren in the middle of the floor so that it was harder to double team. And then her player kept sinking in. I thought her timing on her lift cuts, I know that sounds like a really minor thing, but that's the difference. Those are inches of like, okay, are we making a turnover or are we getting a three? And I thought, those decisions being made, but we've been working at this, and every single game, the first 5 minutes, I talked to our staff about, okay, how are they playing Lauren? What's the adjustment we need to make? Because every team's doing it a little bit different. They really tried to front Lauren and tried to deny touches more so than anyone else has at this point. And I think that'll force us to grow a little bit in that area as we look at this film. But, I think it really is our team is, this is like a broken record and they roll their eyes every time I say it, but sometimes you, sometimes me, always us. And be prepared for your number being called. And I think the reality is that London and others were prepared. And I do think it was really pivotal that we didn't try to force it in.
Another just star of this game to me, Alina Arnasalo. And I know Andrew is all bought in on Arnasalo, and I absolutely am too. A freshman that no one was really talking about going into this. That wasn't a player that was expected. She wasn't even supposed to be starting to begin this season, but obviously the injury to Kiki Rice changed some things up for UCLA. Now, this game, she stepped up. And I loved a question Lauren Betts was asked in the postgame was, who was the most underrated player on this team? And Arnasalo was the answer. Here's what she had to say, because I loved this answer.
I'm going to have to say E, our freshman. She's incredible, and I will keep hyping her up because, just like the skill set that she has at her age, and to come in and start from the very beginning of the season, and obviously Kiki being out, she wasn't expecting that, but she kind of took on that role and just went for it. And she's just never intimidated by anybody. You saw today, like, she's going through people like it's nothing. I'm like, dang, like, it's crazy. But she's so skilled, and I'm just really proud of her. But yeah, I would say she's probably, she shouldn't be underrated anymore, but.
Another big question coming out of this game that we didn't get answered in the post-game press conference is Mylasia Fulwiley only playing 3 minutes in this game. Frankly, from my perspective, from not anything based on the post-game or anything that came from what we heard from Don Staley, purely from what I saw in this game, this team needed a spark offensively. And Tessa Johnson was able to provide that, especially in the first half. She was phenomenal. She was really the only player that could get going. Mylasia Fulwiley is the type of player that provides a spark. And we have seen, we've heard Dawn talk about the balance between Mylasia, because yes, obviously she's such an exciting player, but she's a player that can be a little bit more kind of all over the place in a sense, even though I personally disagree in that way, in the sense of not allowing her to work through it and kind of keeping that leash short. And this was the shortest leash that we have seen for Mylasia Fulwiley, maybe her entire time at South Carolina, was this game today. And it felt like a game where, why not try? Why not try and just see if Mylasia, who struggled when she in the minutes that she did play, but you only played a couple minutes. You're not getting much time to even really get settled into the game, and especially in a game where nobody else is settled. And so now figuring out, where do you go from here if you're South Carolina and your guards? Is it changing the starting lineup? Is it finding a new combo? Because Tessa played fantastic. We saw Chloe Kitts not start the second half after starting the game, and instead Ashlyn Watkins came in and started. This is a new equation. This is a new formula for South Carolina. And a loss like this, I don't want to say it felt inevitable, because I don't think that's the case. You can't say that with South Carolina. But maybe necessary is the word to figure out who are going to be the players on this edition of South Carolina, in this new look South Carolina. Is it going to be a big that steps up and grows? Is it potentially a Joyce Edwards? Is it an Ashlyn Watkins? Is it one of the guards like Tahina Paopao continuing to level up her game? Is it a Mylasia Fulwiley kind of getting the opportunity and running with it, or a Tessa Johnson? There's so many questions that need to now be answered for South Carolina, because there's been games where it looked a little shaky. And I tweeted this out, like, there's been slow starts for South Carolina. We saw the Clemson game. That game was close at halftime, and by the end of the third quarter, it was over. So how do they go from here? Because this team, this UCLA team, is not Clemson. These teams that they're going to be playing in their end goals of playing deep into March are not Clemson. I'm sorry, Clemson's catching so many strays here, but they're not. There's levels. And right now, a slow start South Carolina team is not able, if this game is any indication, does not have the offense to dig out of that hole. We didn't see it tonight. And so the strategy now is to figure out why and figure out how in order to change that. I can't wait. This weekend in LA was the center of the basketball universe, and it delivered. We have more questions than we have answers, and I think that is a phenomenal thing for the rest of the season and keeping the excitement alive and keeping the hype alive. And I know for me, look, these games were fantastic in their own different ways. It's interesting, it's intriguing, it's engaging to see women's basketball be at this level where any team can lose on any day. And don't get me wrong, Notre Dame, UCLA are very, very good teams. But the overwhelming hype and eyes were on USC and USC. I'll let you take your pick. Now leaving this weekend, the people that have to do the AP poll rankings or Shard, God bless your soul, doing rankings, have fun. But this is fantastic for women's basketball, and I'm so excited to continue covering this season here for No Cap Space, hoping to get more boots on the ground elsewhere as well. It's been such a phenomenal weekend here in LA. Thank you so much for your support to allow me and the rest of us in No Cap Space to do the things that we do. We're so appreciative of you. So make sure you share this, you like, you subscribe, you hit the Substack, all of the above, so we can continue bringing you boots on the ground coverage like this all across the country. And I'll see you next time.